Okay, good evening. So today we'll be taking up comparative politics and the last part of the IR, that is Afghanistan, Japan, and certain organization like SCO. So here we have to just make an analysis rather than going what is the question, because you can guess where the question can come. So first let's take up Afghanistan and Japan, and then we'll go into this organization like Indo-Pacific region, uh, SCO, Quad, I think. So here let us take one regarding India, Afghanistan. India, Afghanistan. And obviously the most important topic here with regarding India and Afghanistan would be the return back of Taliban and what will be the implications of it on India's interest within Afghanistan, or they might also look at India's developmental activities in Afghanistan, or they might also look through the direction of the proxy war between India and Pakistan in Afghanistan. That can be also one of the angle. But let us look into some question what they have asked, and let us look into how can we address these questions. So let us look into one question on Afghanistan. So this was asked in 2020. So let us think what they've asked. The war in Afghanistan, the war in Afghanistan, the war in Afghanistan is crucial from the point of view, of India's national security, if the Americans withdraw, means this is a 2020 question, because already Americans have withdrawn, but that time they had asked this question: if the Americans withdraw, and jihadis emerge, just a second. And the jihadis emerge, with a sense of triumphalism, India will face an increasing onslaught of terrorism, comment. So lengthy question, but more importantly we need to understand what exactly they're asking. It is asked for 20 marks, and this has been asked in UPSC 2020. So here, more importantly, in these type of questions, first we'll have to look into what exactly they're asking, and then we'll have to look into what exactly we need to approach. So here we need to understand first the demand of the question. So the keywords, the war in Afghanistan is crucial. Okay, it is crucial for whom? From point of view of India. So obviously, what is the war going in Afghanistan? That is between the Taliban and the Americans and the civilian government of Afghanistan. And it is important from India's national security. So the question is asking about how emergence of Taliban can threaten India's national security. If the Americans withdraw, now currently the Americans have withdrawn, but at that point of time when the Americans were withdrawing, the jihadis will emerge. So who are the jihadis here? That can be the Taliban, that can be the Al-Qaeda, that can be the Lashkar-e-Toiba which operate, or even it can be ISIS which can emerge. Then India will face onslaught of terrorism. So basically here you have to say how the power vacuum that is filled in by terror groups, how it can impact India's security on Kashmir, one implications in that regard. So basically you have to divide your answer into saying that first explaining what is the ongoing situation here, then you also have to explain the importance of Afghanistan to India. So we consider Afghanistan as what? The extended neighborhood, and how the political instability in Afghanistan can create a power vacuum. And why there is a power vacuum? Because of a possible US withdrawal. So you can link the declining US hegemony and how this can create space for terror groups. So Pakistan can use their influence with Taliban and ensure that Kabul becomes a nest for anti-Indian terror groups. Then you can also link how Taliban resorts to drug trafficking, and you can say a probable impact of drug problem in Punjab and these parts. And you can also mention here about Golden Crescent, and you can also say the Kashmir. Now Pakistan can use the Taliban fighters to penetrate Kashmir, because once the Taliban's victory happens, now the next issue that because the Taliban fighters will be looking for another space to occupy. So Kashmir will be one probable thing where infiltration can happen. And the other reason also, the other problem can also what India can face is India's assets in Afghanistan might come under the attack of terror groups. So India has invested around $3 billion. India has acquired or invested in the Hajijak mines in Afghanistan. It can also impact India's energy security. Why? Because Chabahar port can get affected, or it can also derail Tapi pipeline project. So then you need to write about what are the possible measures. What are the possible measures that New Delhi must take with regarding the changing geopolitical scenario in Afghanistan. So here you can mention about one, you can say currently India's policy has seen a shift from what? The Afghan owned peace process to what? What it has changed to now? Afghan owned peace process. Today you can say the government is saying that engage with Taliban, but do not endorse Taliban in order to ensure protection of India's assets. Secondly, India can also make use of platforms such as SCO, which has regional anti-terrorism structure in that regard, to ensure there is a peaceful transition of power or terrorism can be curtailed by bringing other countries along into the equation. And third one, India should also focus on its border security or enhance its forces, especially in Kashmir. So you can say Article 370 revocation and making it a union territory in that regard will get more control over the center with respect to tackling the problem. So these are the probable points that you can include in your answer. Then you can also write in your conclusion saying that what the given changing scenario in Afghanistan, so you can say in your conclusion, Afghanistan presents Afghanistan presents a litmus test presents a litmus test to India, litmus test to India to emerge as a regional and global power. Afghanistan presents a litmus test for India to emerge as a regional and global power. So this can be used as your conclusion. So as I told, IR is easy to go about if you are able to analyze the question pretty well, identify the keywords in the question, and more focus should be given on structuring of your answers. And yeah, here and there you can bring concepts in your answer where you can say power vacuum or the role of non-state actors and how this also affects India's national interest or what kind of security threat it poses. Usually the non-traditional security emerging from non-state actors within the region. So these are the things which you can write, and Afghanistan can also become a base for proxy war for Pakistan to wage against India. Keywords, or you can say this will increase Pakistan's strategic depth in Afghanistan in comparison to India. So these are the things that you can write in your answer. So here again there is no need of any new content. You have to be able to articulate your answer pretty well. So then you can say one more question they have asked on Afghanistan in previous year is that they have asked about, do you think in 2018 they asked, do you think India's capacity building role India's capacity building role in Afghanistan has shrunk the strategic space has shrunk the strategic space for Pakistan there. So this was asked in 2018 and they are asking you to discuss. So this is the question that has been asked in 2018 and it has been asked for 20 marks. Do you think India's capacity building Afghanistan has shrunk the strategic space for Pakistan? So now you tell how will you start your answer, what will be the introduction you are going to write. What is the introduction that can be written? What, tell me, what will you exactly write? Online students, what will you write? The introduction for this question. Do you think India's capacity building role in Afghanistan has shrunk the strategic space for Pakistan there? Afghanistan is a potential friend. Now tell me exactly what will you write? Articulation is very important in IR. Any online student who is able to bring an introduction for this question? So if you look at the nature of the question they're asking about India Pakistan's competition which is there in Afghanistan. So obviously we can say throughout its history Afghanistan has been one of the epicenter for the global great games. In a mind, what you can say? Throughout its history Afghanistan has been an epicenter for great games. So this is one of the introduction what you can write. See Shivani, don't start your answer with the digital survey. It's found that Afghanistan people have more goodwill towards India than Pakistan, people to people ties. That you bring it in your arguments. So in introduction, try to introduce what is this geopolitical significance of Afghanistan. So why India and Pakistan are interested in Afghanistan? Because it is geopolitically important. So for that you can write as an introduction is that throughout its history, Afghanistan has been an epicenter for great games. Then what will you write? That is different. It is graveyard of empires means nobody has been able to rule here. That is different. So if you are writing some question on let us take US role in Afghanistan, there you can write introduction that Afghanistan is known as the graveyard of empires. But for this question that won't be apt. For this question you can go with this introduction. Then what will you write? So basically here you have to speak about India's capacity building in Afghanistan. India's capacity, we have to tell what India is doing in Afghanistan. So how India is using its soft power in Afghanistan. And you can then write about, so because of its geopolitical importance, and being part of India's extended neighborhood, India has made a lot of investments in Afghanistan, or India has been exercising its soft power through investments. So here you write about some parts about what India has done in Afghanistan. For example, 3 billion investments in infrastructure. India also constructed this dam called as the Salma Dam. India has also constructed the Afghan parliament. India also built these roadways in Afghanistan, Zaranj Delaram highway. India is also training the Afghan police forces. India is also what you can say um, running this Indira Gandhi national hospitals in that regard, providing medical services. So in a way, India's soft power has grown in Afghanistan over the years, and you can say this to a certain extent has built goodwill of the Afghan people towards India. And now you can bring Shivani's points, what you can say that the Rand Corporation, when they did a survey, the country which topped with the preference of Afghan people was India. And this has created, what you can say, concerns for Pakistan about growing India's influence in Afghanistan, which Pakistan traditionally has always felt the Afghanistan to be part of their extended neighborhood or their neighborhood. But however, we cannot completely say this has shrunk the scope of Pakistan. Why? Because the geopolitical reality is different. One, now because that question was asked in 2018, now things have lots changed. What are the lot of things that has changed? One, you can say the collapse of the democratically elected government of Afghanistan and return back of Taliban has now created greater strategic depth to Pakistan. Why? Because given Pakistan's close ties with the Haqqani networks. Second one, you can say Indian government might have enjoyed the goodwill of the Afghan people, but currently that won't matter because it is Taliban who will be calling the shots. And you can say now because other countries want closer ties with Taliban, being it Russia or China or the other regional powers, now here Pakistan will become important for these countries, especially for China. Now the BRI project which goes through Afghanistan to protect their assets, they'll have to engage through Pakistan. So I can say here Pakistan's role again has widened or deepened, or now the tides have turned in Pakistan's favor. And third one, you can also say that as Mr. Vajpayee once said that you can change your friends, not your neighbors. So it will be not possible for Afghanistan to completely, keep out Pakistan because of its being their neighboring country at last. But nevertheless, you can say with change scenario, India should also bring change in its policy. India's or New Delhi should bring more pragmatism into the policy. By what? By having limited engagement with Taliban, and given the context that in recent times there has been conflict between Taliban and Pakistan over the Durand line, and then you can also speak about that India should continue its soft power potential, what it has in Afghanistan, which continued investment, but again with Taliban. But however, there are people like Happy Mon Jacob, who are of the view, what? They are of the view that there is, what you can say, there is limited success to this policy, because on one hand, even though India will engage with Taliban, there is no guarantee that Taliban will stand by its words. And second one, given Taliban's link with Pakistan, Pakistan would not allow Taliban to have very close ties with India or completely toe India's line. But India is left with no other option but to bring a slight shift in its policy of what? From an Afghan-led peace process to engage with Taliban but do not endorse Taliban. That should have been your answer. So that's it. When you say IR is dynamic in the sense when you wrote this answer in 2018, your answer will be different. When you are writing the same question answer today, because today Pakistan has greater strategic space. Okay, so you have to speak about geopolitics. That is inevitable, that you cannot say that Afghanistan can completely keep out Pakistan. So that you need to speak about in your answer. So anybody else has any other point that they can add to this particular question? Shivani and others. But what will you add regarding refugee crisis? The question is different. No? That's what I told you. If you look at the question, what they are saying, do you think India's capacity building role in Afghanistan has shrunk this strategic space for Pakistan there? Not necessary, right? Yeah, to a certain extent it was in India's favor, but you can say still Pakistan is required for Afghanistan. Still Pakistan has strategic space in Afghanistan. Even back then you can say if the Americans wanted to fight Taliban, it was inevitable for them to negotiate through Pakistan. So that angle you could have brought in your answer, and that's why I told these questions will change according to what time period they are asking. Okay, this was asked in 2018, but today if they ask the same question, your answer will be molded according to what we discussed currently. So first you have to tell what is the efforts of India, how that efforts has yielded result, how India has become very popular among the Afghan people. But again then you can say the international politics is not only about soft power, it is also about hard power. Now you can see how the ridden back of Taliban has created things more favorable to Pakistan, how Pakistan becomes important for the regional powers to interact with Taliban, and it also given historical ties between Pakistan and Taliban, because historically India backed northern alliance, but it was Pakistan who had closer ties, especially with Haqqani networks of Taliban. And you can say India has also issues dealing with Taliban because of their ideological orientation. But nevertheless, you can say that yeah, Pakistan's strategic depth has increased now. But however, it is not that everything is good between Pakistan and Taliban. India should reach out to those other elements of Taliban, try to engage with them. And currently, Taliban is also looking for legitimacy, and that is why they are also trying to reach out to different countries. So India should take that chance. But what Happy Mon Jacob says that whether you take a chance, it is inevitable. You have to take that risk, but there is no guarantee that this engagement with Taliban will ensure that India's assets will be completely protected. So that is why again you can end with the same conclusion here also, saying that that Afghanistan currently presents a litmus test for India to emerge as a regional and a global power. Okay. So now let us look at from Japan that what questions have come here, and let us look at India and Japan bilateral relations. So let us take some questions on Japan which has come. So take down this question. Do you agree? Do you agree that the growing assertiveness assertiveness of China, growing assertiveness of China is leading to multi-layered Indo-Japan relations. Indo-Japan relations. Comment. So this was asked in 2018 for 15 marks. So how would you see, again IR questions, most of the questions, see Satyam Tripathi, but sir, Pakistan does not have strategic depth in Afghanistan. India operates a technical mission in Afghanistan. High impact development projects will continue. See Satyam, even though the high developmental projects will continue in that regard, so that you cannot just say that Pakistan does not have a strategic position there. So obviously, given Pakistan's closeness to Taliban, to a certain extent you can say Pakistan is an important player. For example, the Moscow round of talks, they invited Pakistan to the talks. Doha round of talks, it featured whom? It featured Pakistan, it did not feature India. Right, when the Americans called for the Qatar round of talks for Taliban negotiation, India was not invited. It was Pakistan who was invited. So most of the regional security arrangement what is going on, it is happening through Pakistan centric. So that is what we say, India is doing its soft power in that regard, high developmental projects, but it does not mean, that is what Happy Mon Jacob said, that does not mean essentially that Taliban controlled Afghanistan now will completely push out Pakistan out of the equation and completely tilt in India's favor. So those are the arguments, but you have to say that means in a point you have to balance your point. So you cannot completely say that the strategic space to Pakistan has completely shrunk in Afghanistan. Satyam, you were able to get the point. Okay. Now in this question, do you agree the growing assertiveness? So one keyword is that growing assertiveness of China. So you have to tell about what is that growing assertiveness of China. And then they are asking the question, linking it as that how this is leading to multi-layered. So multi-layered means at multiple levels. So political level, technological level, security level, trade level. It is leading to India-Japan relations. They are asking you to comment. So there are two ways you can look to answer this question. So one way you can bring an argument that there is no doubt the assertiveness of China is leading to India's development. You can give arguments and examples. But you can also argue that it is not only because of China that India and Japan have become closer together. There are other reasons also both countries coming together. For example, both have common ambition to become a permanent member in the UN Security Council. Naturally, Japan and India's economics complement. They are aging economy. India is the youngest economy. You have demographic advantage. And third one, you can say the rise of now non-traditional security threats such as climate change, etc., has compelled India and Japan to come together. For example, Japan is one of the countries which is affected most by tsunami and earthquakes, etc. So you can write, yes, China has brought the relationship much closer, but apart from assertive reasons for China, there are other reasons also why India and Japan are becoming beneficial. India is a huge investment opportunity for Japanese companies because Japan's economy is facing stagnation, where Indian economy is the growing economy. You are getting the point? So this is the broader view, but how will you start your answer? How will you write your introduction? So for IR, all it depends upon not reading so much, but ability to analyze well. So what will you write as your introduction? What will be an ideal introduction for this question? Japan has been our close friend in crisis, difficulties from time of Indian. See, now this introduction, what Shivani is saying, Japan has been our close friend in crisis, difficulties from time of Indian national movement to present active engagement in growing assertiveness of China. So I feel that introduction is a bit too complex. So instead of that, try to come out with a simple introduction. So simple introduction should speak about China. So you can say Napoleon one part once said China is in deep slumber, and once she wakes up, she will shake the world. And you can say the tremors are being felt in both India and Japan. So that is one of the introduction that you can write. So that will be an ideal introduction to start your answer. Then now you need to explain how assertive China is basically becoming problem for India. So speak about China's claim of 9 dash line in South China Sea, and they employing cabbage strategy is impacting both India and Japan with respect to what? The freedom of navigation, which is an important trade route for both India and Japanese. Second one, you can say the assertive China has also claimed the Senkaku Island, which is a disputed territory with regards to Japan. And similarly, China's salami slicing strategy along the Indian borders or incursions along Ladakh and in recent times has also heated up or broken the modus vivendi between India and what is it? China. So in a way you can say the China is looking to build a unipolar Asia by flexing its muscle, and as Kautilya has suggested, your enemy's enemy is bound to become your natural friend. And with a declining American abilities or capabilities, now Japan also feels a closer strategic ties with India will be interest of both India and Japan. So this has led to what? This has led to growth of multi-layered ties between India and Japan. Now go on to say how they are collaborating. So start with the important thing, strategically how they are collaborating. Japan has brought the what is that? Free and open Indo-Pacific, and this has also finds what you can say consonance with India's free, open, inclusive Indo-Pacific. And you can say both India and Japan are also today working together with what? Diversification of the global supply chains. So they have been part of supply chain resilient initiative. And today India and Japan also have elevated their ties to what? G 2+2 talks, and they have also signed the AXA agreement, acquisition and cross servicing agreement, which will enable them to use each other ports for humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. And both countries today also are working with respect to what? The developmental of infrastructure projects in Africa, that is the Afro-Asia Growth Economic Corridor. And you can also say the Japanese parliament passed a bill and exempted India, and India became the first non-NPT country to get the nuclear waiver from Japan. And you can also say that India and Japan are also part of Quad, which largely focuses on protecting the UN Convention on Laws of Seas, and especially the China's unilateral claim of islands in South China Sea. Then we can also see that Japan has also transferred technology to India in terms of, you can say, bullet train technology. Both countries are also working on exploration of rare earth materials. So you can say an MOU has been signed between both countries where Japan will help India with respect to extraction of rare earth materials. So they are looking for de-risking and diversification of global supply chains. But nevertheless, you can say it's not only assertive China that is reason for India-Japan's closer relationship. There are other factors also, such as the aging population in Japan naturally complements India's demographic dividend. And you can also say that Japan is a capital surplus country, and India is an what is that? It is an opportunity land for investments. And both countries also have a common vision to what? To enter the UN Security Council. So they have also been part of G4. And today we can also say that the non-traditional security threats such as climate change has compelled both countries to work together on humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. So, but nevertheless, you can say in any two relations there can be minor irritants. So, between India and Japan also there have been minor irritants. So, one, Japan have complained to India about the red tapeism and difficulty with the doing of ease of doing business. Second one, even at times what you can say, we can see the reflections of the Cold War mentality on issues such as Russia and Ukraine, where India continues its NAM policy, where Japan continues to be close alliance partner to the West. And third one, there is also differences between the two countries. For example, India is reluctant to participate in RCEP because India feels that countries like Japan and South Korea in that regard are demanding greater concessions from India in terms of protection of intellectual property rights. But nevertheless, one cannot deny that the rise of China has brought India and Japan very closer together, and as Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in his book Utkushi I Kuni says a strong Japan is good for India. A strong India is good for Japan. A strong India is good for Japan. A strong Indo-Japanese relation is good for Asia. Strong Indo-Japanese relation is good for India at large. Sorry, good for Asia at large. So this you can use as your conclusion. So getting a point. So how to go about? So here you have to be able to bring this organic flow in your answer. Here you have to focus more on bringing your understanding of the demand of the question, and yeah, looking at the question from multiple perspectives will help in a long way. And that's why I told, like India, Japan, India, Afghanistan, these all don't require full-fledged deep studying. Largely you need to know the dynamics of the relationship. You have to be able to view the relationship from different angle. Yeah, a good introduction, a good conclusion will will help you to go a long way. So largely these are the bilateral relations what they've asked in the exam. Minor ones are there, India and Iran, that will be same, you use the same approach. Now sometimes they can also ask questions on Quad, SCO, BRICS. So obviously you can use one common theme in answering almost all these questions, one common structure. So one, you have a good introduction for each one of them, and then look at the aspects that why this has come into being, or what is India's interest within formation of Quad. Then also look at how or what is the scope that these offer for India's interest in that regard, national interest. Then also you look at what are the challenges which are there. So for example, if we take Quad, one we can say Quad does not have a direction. Second one we can say Quad is still at evolving stage. It does not have a permanent secretariat or even the charter has been recently bought. Then you can say Quad is a mismatch between their expectations. Why? Because if you see in Quad, India, Australia, Japan and US. So you have three countries which belong to global north, and India is the only country which belongs to global south. And second one, you can say India's relation with Russia makes things more complex. And you can see US largely views Indo-Pacific from more of a China perspective, whereas India looks at Quad more at a broader perspective, whereas Russia has criticized Quad as what? Asian NATO. And you also have to know that for India today, Quad is not only a defense or mechanism, it represents a range of areas where you can cover. It provides trade, working on emerging technologies, humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, vaccine co-production. It also look at the idea of addressing the role of piracy or non-state actors, and also protecting the liberal institutions. To work as a knowledge economy, blue water economy. So there are many dimensions what you can bring with rice. So in these kind of a question, go for more dimensions in that regard and more analysis. Then see again here you cannot predict what will be the question. Now whatever they ask the question, try to understand the question, try to address the demand of the question. So they might ask, Quad is very important. So write out what is the importance of Quad. So speak from a geo-political point of view, what it is significance. Speak from a geo-economics point of view, what it is significance. Third one speaks about the liberal institutions. Speak about again, the countries which are there coming together. So speak about how Quad can be also a platform for other countries within the region, like net security that can be provided. But again, you can speak about what are the challenges within Quad. And here one or two statements you can read and keep it ready regarding Quad or etc. Means any expert who is there, what is his opinion in that regard. But apart from that, there is no need for you to read 100 scholars' name to write these answers. It will won't help to that extent. Similarly, again, if you take SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So it was called as Shanghai 5, etc., etc. India and Pakistan became member to it, and recently Iran has become member to it. So obviously you can say same thing. SCO, how does or why India looks at SCO to what interest? For example, you have to speak in through the lens of Central Asia. So you're able to link many dimensions here: energy security, food security, terrorism, drug trafficking, human trafficking, and you can say resources. Then you can also speak about stability in Afghanistan or stabilization of Afghanistan. And you can also speak about SCO can be also a platform for reforming the, what you can say, international or democratization of international institutions. But again, what are the challenges you need to bring? The bilateral relation between China, BRI project has been endorsed by SCO, which India has not endorsed, or SCO can be also a platform for India and Pakistan, conflicts what are there. And you can also see with Iran coming into the equation, now it gives more character to SCO as what an Asian or you can say it is an anti-NATO security initiative, or it will make India more difficult to balance ties. When you look at SCO also, in SCO most of the countries are semi-authoritarian in that regard. India is only the democratic country with it. So these are the different angles you can again look at SCO to write your answers. And that's why I told these kind of questions will be easy to answer in the exam, but again you will have to go by what is the question they have asked. And if you are able to know what is the question they have asked, then you will be able to frame your points accordingly. So any doubts in these parts? Any doubts you have on these parts? Or again, let us take NATO Plus. So let us ask a question. This is not a question which has been asked, this is just a question which might come. So they might ask, do you think the NATO Plus might be an attractive proposition, to India, given the growing assertiveness of China in recent times. So let us think this is a probable question they will ask on NATO Plus. This question has not come, I am just telling as a model question they ask for 15 marks, 250 words, or there is no word limit for PSR. So let us take a probable PSR question. So I will give you 12 minutes to write the answer. So now the time is 6:28. So you have to complete the answer by 6:40. Your time starts now. "12 minutes to write the answer." Here the word is attractive position. Do you think NATO Plus might be an attractive proposition to India given the growing assertiveness of China in recent times? 12 minutes, okay, 6:29 by 6:41 you have to enter. 6 minutes. Last 4 minutes. Last 2 minutes. Last 60 seconds. Time is up. So both the online students can also stop writing. So when you look at this question, let us think this is a probable question, this can come this year. So they are asking, do you think NATO plus might be an attractive proposition to India given the growing assertiveness of China in recent times? So again you can say the introduction can be same. Napoleon Bonaparte's quote saying that China in deep slumber, and once China has woken up, she is going to shake the world, and immediate tremors are felt along the Indian border. And you can say, what is the growing China's assertiveness? You can say, one, their salami slicing strategy along the border, increased incursions, growing China's naval presence, that is string of pearls which is there. So this is all presented what? A strategic challenge to India. And to overcome this challenge, you can say one proposal is NATO plus. So obviously here you have to tell a bit about what is NATO plus. So NATO plus is NATO's engagement with regional security partners. So you can say currently NATO plus you have countries like Israel, you have Japan, you have South Korea. So they are also now asking India to be part of NATO plus. So here in your answer you have to tell what are the positives that NATO plus can offer India, but at the same time you can also tell what are the inhibitions or limitations. So positives in that regard, you can say being part of NATO plus, the idea of a collective security can be built, and most of the members of NATO plus do have problems with growing assertiveness of China. Second, you can say NATO plus can also what you can say uh, try to balance India's what you can say conventional military limitations or growing asymmetry between India and China. So you can say that it will also boost now India's defense engagement or technological transfer or arms deals with the NATO countries, and NATO is known to have advanced because you have France countries as part of NATO. But nevertheless, NATO plus also offers, India should also look at the impact of joining NATO plus. For example, NATO is largely seen through the lens of a Cold War mentality, and you can say India has always been asserting strategic autonomy, and joining NATO might give a perception of what India being a camp follower. Or second one, you can say it can also impact India's relations with Russia in that regard. It can push Russia more closer towards China. And thirdly, you can say that joining NATO plus alone cannot guarantee India's security, because we can say with growing with the declining American limitations and the Europeans, as S. Jaishankar said that what Europe thinks that Europe's problem is world's problem, but world's problem is not Europe's problem. So this might not be an what you can say a guaranteed security for India at large. Or third one, India joining NATO plus, it can push China to become more assertive towards India in that regard. So these are the challenges, what you can say, that why India cannot join NATO plus. And you can see recently S. Jaishankar also said that NATO plus does not fit into India's scheme of things because India does not believe in joining military alliances. But however, you can say what Harsh V. Pant, his view is that he says that India should not reject NATO plus on ideological grounds, that it is rooted through Cold War. India's joining NATO plus or not should be based more on pragmatic grounds. And if you say a growing China's assertive in near future, and the growing asymmetry between India and China in future might keep India interested in being part of NATO Plus. That is one of the analysis what you can bring about. So any other point what you guys thought about, what you can write here? You can say, see, another point you can bring an argument saying that why there is no, India is already part of Quad. Okay, and Quad compared to NATO Plus is more seen in a broader way, and NATO Plus, so the other problem with joining NATO Plus can be also seen that it is also going to impact India's relation with neighboring countries. Now many neighboring countries might look India through the lens of the Western groupings or joining a military camp. So India being already part of Quad in that regard, some feel that joining NATO Plus would not be required. Hmm. NATO Plus is different, NATO is different. NATO Plus is different, NATO is different. So here Article 5 does not come with respect to NATO Plus. That's why I told NATO Plus is different. NATO Plus does not work how NATO exactly works, but it's greater engagement, the thing. So online students, any other point you feel that you can add a valid point into this analysis, that India joining NATO Plus, or is it an attractive proposition to India? That we covered now. It will push Russia closer to Pakistan. Yeah, you can say that India's relation with China is big. There's a lot of interdependence. So India cannot completely dealing from China, because India also is part of SCO. India is also part of BRICS, where India is having closer relations with Russia and also to an engagement with China. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, you can say that. That's what he did. No? NATO does not fit into India's scheme of things. Okay, Shivani, what's lose strategic autonomy? It will make China all more assertive. Yeah. Who will not? So you can say there is no guarantee for the technology transfer will happen. If you join NATO Plus also you cannot. Yeah, that you can say. So these are the points that you can generate. That's what I told. For these kind of, for IR now you have to predict what question might come. So if you look into probable areas where you can expect question this year, is one is this NATO Plus, BRICS expansion. So they can ask BRICS expansion. Will it promote India's interest, or you have to look from Indo-centric point of view. So India feels more number of in BRICS is going to water down the efficiency of BRICS, or you can say the new countries which joined are largely all semi-authoritarian countries like Saudi, Iran, etc. It might add more anti-West character to it. This is one more area they can ask question. Tista agreement between India and Bangladesh. This is one more probable area the question can be asked. And you can say there is a growing situation of instability in India's neighborhood, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Pakistan. So they might ask about the political instability in India's neighborhood. How does it impact India's interest? This is one more area where they can ask questions. And the one more area where the question can also come is through SCO. You can say SCO provides both opportunities and challenges for India. Critically analyze, something like that question can feature. They might also ask a question regarding Afghanistan. So they might ask, analyze the evolution of Indian foreign policy post Taliban takeover. So that might one of the question that might come in the examination, the current examination. Or they might also ask question about India's Indo Pacific and maritime strategy. This here is coalition politics. So they might ask a question on coalition politics and its impact on Indian foreign policy. This is one area the question might come. And the other thing they might also ask about the Israel-Palestine issue which is going on. So they might ask how the recent conflict between Israel and Palestine will have bearings on India's interest in West Asia. So obviously here you have to first tell what is India's interest. India's energy security, diaspora, India has a lot of investments also in this region. And fourth one, security interest, like extended neighborhood part, and geographical importance of this particular region. And you can say the recent formation of I2U2. India has recently dehyphenated policies with Israel. So you need to look from that how the recent Israel and Palestinian conflict is going to impact on India's interest. So that you have to look from a broader way. Then one more area they can also ask the question this time is that if you look at the recent issue which is happening in northeast, that is Manipur, which has been burning. So they might ask that how the Manipur issue or burning can have impact on India's look east and act east policy that can come, or the growing instability in Africa in that regard, the military coup which we have already discussed. They might ask, analyze or critically analyze that what are the reasons for the collapse of democratic governments, democratic governments in Africa. Or they might also ask about India and European Union, India EU, the negotiations which are reached at logjam or bilateral trade investment agreement in that regard. Then they can also ask question about how the Russia-Ukraine conflict has impact on India's interest, as well as they can ask on what is the impact on international politics. So basically India's interest, same thing, try to bring security. The focus now will shift from Indo-Pacific to Eurasia. This will give room for China to grow its assertive. A weakened Russia in the relationship will become more dependent China, which is not in India's interest at large. It makes more difficult for India to balance relation between the West and the Russians in that regard. And it can also create scope for what, because S-400 missiles delivery will become delayed because now Russia is involved in the conflict. So these are certain things which can have an India's interest. So again you can look from international politics how. So one, it indicates the declining role of international institutions like UN, etc. Covenant without war or nothing but words. Humanitarian crisis. Third, you can say revival of NATO. Fourth, you can say the re-comeback of the Cold War. Fourth, you can say global supply chains get choked. Fifth, you can say the revival of realist politics like balance of power, collective security are becoming more important, means traditional securities are more important than non-traditional security threats. Or fourth one, you can say it can now this can embolden China to make certain assertive moves towards Taiwan in that regard. Fifth, you can say the global oil prices will shoot up in that regard. Food security, wheat, which was impact, that you can also write what is the impact of the growing thing. And you can also, it can have impact on the newly proposed India, Middle East, Europe economic, this corridor in that regard. You can write a lot of things. That's why I told you, look from a broader lens that how it is going to impact. So that's why I told what you can look into, predict certain topics in IR, because IR is one subject where you can easily guess what is the area the question might come, and you can be prepared to it. Means prepared means do brainstorming over these topics in form of questions, that what question can come, how you can answer. As I told, NATO Plus, what we just discussed now, is it an attractive proposition to India or not? They can also ask questions on the border incursions. Between the China's border incursion to India. So they might ask what are the reasons for it. There are many concepts or many explanations. One, you can say the growing asymmetry between India and China. Second, you can say COVID-19, which China tried to deflect the issue by breaking up border issues. Third, you can say that with growing, what you can say, India's closeness or proximity to US has resulted in China becoming more assertive along the border. Fourth, you can say India's revocation of Article 370 in that regard has mooted China to raise these border issues in a way to contain India. Sixth, you can say that China's assertive along the border can be also an internal thing when there is growing criticism against the Xi Jinping government. So to divert the issue, they might rake up border issues with India. So then you will also have to speak out along with reasons what steps that India will have to take. So India will also have to try for external balancing as well as internal balancing. So in external balancing, Quad, NATO plus probability, and you can also say that India now diversifying its supply chain constraint resilient initiative in that regard, or India using international platforms to put pressure on China, or internal thing you can say one, you have the parliamentary committee on defense who have recommended that India will have to modernize its defense infrastructure, Atmanirbhar Bharat on a long goal. Or third one, India's economic growth should be boosted to enable to tackle China on a long run. Or sixth one, you can say border infrastructure development has to be brought about along the border areas. That is what Shiv Shankar Menon in his book Choices recommends. Shiv Shankar Menon in his book Choices, he recommends that what India will have to do internal balancing in that regard. So then you can say that, like what Yash Jaishankar says that in his book India Way, that India will have to learn to manage China, and the next 2 decades of India-China relationship will be problematic, but India should learn the art of managing China. So that is what you have to bring the analysis in your paper regarding what are the topics they can ask in the exam. You have to be more, if you see the previous year question, take last 3 years paper and just try to go through which questions they have asked. You can see easily, you can predict these questions that have come in the exam. So if you have done bit of brainstorming beforehand, you'll remember the keywords, you'll remember the analysis, 1 or 2 scholars you also will be able to remember to write a very, very good answer. Okay, and we have also released the current affairs last 6 months, what is there, news to notes which is there, or we have given even IR specific, country specific, what developments have happened. So based on that you can make a broader study, or they can also ask about COP28, because recently this was held. You are getting point. So that's why I told, don't randomly read everything, try to more focus, and still a lot of time is there. So many people will feel constraint of time. So that's why I told, constraint of notes. For this and all, detailed notes is not required. It's keywords, key viewpoints and analysis, different dimensions in your analysis, what is exactly required. But more important skill you need is to decipher the question exactly what they're asking and structuring your answer. If that you are able to do, naturally your scores will go up. And that's why I told, in IR these are the topics that it is required. They're not going to ask India Let us take every time they won't ask India, Maldives. Even if they ask India and Maldives, try to have an analysis. Like, common points are there. No? Common points with any neighboring country can be what? Their internal politics, security importance, China card, terrorism, non-state actors, investments. All you need to know some specific, like Ibrahim Soli, India out campaign, growing influence of China in Maldives. And you can say that India, in recently we see Prime Minister Modi invited Ibrahim Soli to swearing in ceremony. Even he also attended. Why? Because in Maldives knows that they cannot completely alienate India. They need Indian investments. They cannot depend too much on China. At the same time, India also knows that what Vajpayee said, you can change your friends but not your neighbors. Gujarat's doctrine can be, India is unilateral concession to the countries. Patient diplomacy, strategic patience should be there. You're in mind. So think from these angles. That's what I told. Don't randomly write answers. Try to do a lot of brainstorming. Brainstorming will help you a lot, especially in IR paper. Brainstorming is a very important exercise that has to be done. Not randomly writing every answer. Try to brainstorm what to write, how to write, what should be the introduction, what are the different dimensions I can win. So brainstorming, if you do, you get a very good hold over structuring your answers. You will also get over observation of the keywords. And you also will be good in using keywords in your answer. And you have better prepared introductions and conclusion. Analysis you will be able to bring. So this is exactly what will be required in an IR paper at large, nothing else. That's why I told IR won't take so much time to read. It's very easy. If you're a person who's reading newspaper editorial regularly, it's very easy, simple. Yeah, here and there you can have specific. Like for example, whenever you are writing India-Pakistan question, use Shashi Tharoor. Book Pax Indica, where he calls India and Pakistan as brother enemies. So I think I had one more book which I had posted. See, introduction, what you can write here is that one more introduction for India-Pakistan question. The antagonism between India and Pakistan, the antagonism between India and Pakistan, the two nuclear rivals, remains as one of the greatest tragedies, remains as one of the greatest tragedies of Asian politics. So this you can use as introduction, conclusion, but where you have to be good skilled is that knowing where to use and how to use it. And you have Sumit Ganguly, who says the conflict between India and Pakistan is a conflict of identity. It is a conflict of identity that is between Islamist Pakistan and a secular India. Islamist Pakistan and a secular India. And you have Hussein Haqqani, Hussein Haqqani, in his book Reimagining Pakistan, Reimagining Pakistan, he says the in spite India being a huge economic military power, huge economic and military power, the asymmetry and the illusion of parity with India, the illusion of bringing parity with India, drives the deep state in Pakistan, to promote asymmetric warfare, through terrorism. So this is one angle, what you can say. This Hussein Haqqani, who says in his book Reimagining Pakistan, that Pakistan always wants to bring parity with India, and that is why they use asymmetric word. Or you have Satyendra Kumar Lamba or SK Lamba, in his book In Pursuit of Peace, says that India-Pakistan hostilities have become an instrument for political mobilization. So in their domestic politics, they use the hostilities between India and Pakistan to fetch votes in that regard, and that is why you can see there is no incentive for them to become friends in that regard. And you can say Michael Kugelman says that Pakistan wants stable relations with India, but that does not mean it wants to pursue reconciliation. Michael Kugelman. So these kind of things that you can, means again, don't always try to think that you have to add everything in your answer. Look at the question, try to bring arguments. Here and there you can bring these kind of viewpoints integrated into your answer in that regard. But that's what you have to have brainstorming, where to use and how to use. That is the skill always in that regard. And you can also say the keywords what you can use between India and Pakistan relationship is zero sum game, low intensity war, deep state, proxy war, prismatic societies, insecurity dilemma, strategic depth or strategic space. So these are certain keywords you can use in your answer. Or whenever there is a Indus water treaty question exam for India's defense, offensive defense, you can use PM Modi's statement where he said blood and water cannot flow together. Blood and water cannot flow together. So these are the things that you need to have as a set of notes, and not only having them is important, you'll also have to know how to integrate that in your answer based on what is the question they have asked. And that's why I told for IR you cannot make structured notes. It should be basically your understanding and what should be your notes, only this much. So I have also released some notes for the Pakistan, US, China in that regard. Major countries have already given. So here you have to make use of that content. Like if you take China, I don't know, you can use Shiv Shankar Menon's book Choices, where he says India should focus on what? Border infrastructure in that regard. Or S. Jaishankar's Bharat Matters. Why Bharat? What is it? His book name is Bharat Matters, na? Bharat Matters. Bharat? Why Bharat Matters? So in this he has spoken about how the next 2 decades of India-China relations will be difficult, complex interdependence, salami slicing, cabbage strategy, keywords, debt trap, certain points if you know, or you can say civilizational state, Buddhism race between India and China, or you have Mr. Brahma Chelani, in his book Asia, the New Battle Ground for Water, who calls China as what? Hydro hegemon. Or you can also bring Mearsheimer here. Mearsheimer, who says the rise of China won't be peaceful. You're going to have certain content in one page that will be more than enough to write good answers in your paper. Or when you look at India, America in that regard, as I said, use Dennis Cox, who says that finally the world's oldest democracy has embraced the world's largest democracy. Or use Ashley Tellis, who says Washington has made a wrong bet. Washington has made or India is a bad bet. Why India is a bad bet? He says that India will not become America's camp follower in that regard. Or you have PM Modi's statements where you can say India and America today have overcome the historic hesitations. And you can use many things, or you can bring democratic peace theory. Democratic peace theory. Or you can also say this quote, America never loses war, but it only loses interest. It only loses interest. Or I told that conclusion. What is the conclusion in most of the Indo-American questions you can use? The future of Indo-American ties will depend upon to what extent the Americans can accommodate can accommodate India's interest, India's national interest in their larger geopolitical strategy. So these are some certain content you need to keep it with you for the topics what we have discussed, and you have to be able to just integrate in your answer organically based on what is the demand of the question is asked. So you have to be good in knowing where to use which introduction, not randomly using introduction, randomly using theories, randomly using, just for sake of showing. Now some people what they'll do, randomly in Hobbes question they'll tell article 21. Why you will bring article 21 in Hobbes question? Not required. Now answer what they asked on Hobbes. Why you want to show article 21 India? It's not required. So that is what we say, whatever content you have, that needs to be organically integrated, not trying to show that you know this theory or just writing 100 different opinions. Bring analysis, substantiate with 1 or 2 opinions, that will add more value to your answer. So that's why I told IR is easy to prepare. This should be the thing. Now the last part is comparative politics. So again here, I have already shared 2 content material for comparative politics. One is regarding all the content that is required for comparative politics with key points and keywords and the scholars who are there. All you have to do is that go to those key points and keywords and try to look into, means I only given what is the introduction. So for example, if you largely see what do you need to write a good question, definition for comparative politics. So here you can say the definition what you can use for comparative politics. For any question on comparative politics, you can say it is a subdiscipline. It is a subdiscipline. It is a subdiscipline of political science. Subdiscipline of political science that focuses on study of countries' political system, focus on studies of countries' political system, governments, institutions and constitutions across the world. So this is one of the introduction. You have to be able to fit in wherever you find questions on what? Comparative politics. Then other key points like Aristotle is considered as the father of what? Comparative politics, because he has compared 158 constitutions in the world. Then you have Tocqueville, who is one of the early proponents who compared political system of US and France. Again, so he compared two. Then you have Montesquieu. In his book The Spirit of Laws, he uses the word comparative politics. Then simple. Next, what are the two approaches in comparative politics? One, you have traditional approach, and you have modern approach. Traditional approach and modern approach. So obviously traditional approaches were those approaches which emerged before Second World War. Modern approaches those which emerged after Second World War. So what are the important traditional approaches? You have legal institutional approach, you have historical approach, you have philosophical approach. So if you see the question paper, They've never asked in traditional approaches specifically against any one particular approach. They've broadly asked what are the limitations of traditional approaches or comment on traditional approaches. So you will never see them asking right about philosophical approach. So broadly you have to know what are the limitations of approach. What is the limitation? It is ethnocentric, comparative government, not comparative politics. Mainly it was comparing the Western governments. It lacked multidisciplinary approach. You have Ray Macridis, Ray Macridis, who described the traditional approaches as what? Parochial, static, and monographic. He criticized, Ray Macridis, he criticized the traditional approach as what? Monographic, parochial, and static. And he also said they're normative, speculative, they're also normative and speculative. Then again, if you go into why the modern approaches arose, so reasons will be what? One, you can say the behavioral movement, behavioral revolution in the field of political science. This also led to the evolution of modern comparative. The rise of fascism and communism, where traditional methods were not answering, were not able to give reasons that why this happened, because it dealt with human psychology, etc., which this approach didn't have. Then you have third one, emergence of post-colonial societies. Emergence of post-colonial societies. Fourth one, you have prismatic societies, because it's not easy to study the prismatic societies in Asia, Africa, Latin America by what? Using your traditional approaches. That is what it requires, modern approaches. So traditional approach, in traditional approach they saw state as what? They largely saw state as a decision making authority. But if you look at modern approaches, what they see state as? They see state as authoritative allocation of values. Okay. So then you have Gabriel Almond structural functional approach. Then again you have the Marxist criticism, traditional criticism regarding the approaches. Then you have political developmental approach. Again you have Lucien Pai here, who spoke about three parameters, means to check whether a political system is developed or not: equality, capacity, and functional specialization. Then you have Gunnar Myrdal, in his book Asian Drama, he spoke about what? Soft state, the inability of the state to implement policies. So you can use it in questions when you are analyzing politics in India, etc. Then you have F.W. Riggs, who spoke about prismatic societies, means where they retain modern and traditional elements in that regard. So these are all very useful for analyzing the developing countries. And you have the concept called as developmental trap, which was given by Riggs, where there is no balance between equality and capacity, where you can say that the development gets entangled. Then you have Samuel Huntington, who gave the concept of developmental decay, when he says when aspirations of people are more, but the state does not have the ability or institutions to project it, it leads to what? Developmental decay. Then again you can say political modernization theories emerged, where parameters for modernization were what? Rationality, secularization, capitalist mode of production. Again you can say here it is not forceful imposition of democracy, but recommending democracy in a more subdued way. But however, countries like China have shown that what you can become politically modernized without, politically developed without following the capitalist path. And you can have political cultural approach. Who gave political cultural approach? Edward Shills in that regard. Again you have three types of political culture. So first of all you have to define what is political culture. What is political culture? So you can say set of norms, values, orientation of people towards a particular political system, that we call as a political culture. What again? It refers to set of norms, values and orientation. Then you have Sidney Verba, who gave the 4 modes of political culture. Why I am not dictating all this, this is already given as the notes which has been already given and shared with the students. So you have parochial culture, civic culture, subject culture, participation culture. Then you have political sociology as one of the, means marriage between politics and society. So again here you can say there is a quote where there is no politics without society, and there is no society where there is no politics. So you can say Semir Lipset, who told Political Man, he told that where politics and society interact, because you cannot tell politics happens within a society. Or even Aristotle told about man is social animal in that regard. So you can consider Aristotle also as father of political sociology, and Weber, Durkheim are the other important thing. Then again you can say Samuel Huntington's Clash of Civilization can be also brought under political sociological approach. And you can also say Marxism also there is a political social approach, because they say basics of society is what? Economics in that regard. And you have Machiavelli, you can also bring under political sociological approach, because he told what type of society, what type of state is required. So usually he told where society is virtuous, you can have a republican form of government. Where society is not so virtuous, you can have a monarchical type of government. And in India, who have done political socially, Andre Bitte, Yogendra Yadav, Atul Kohli, study of caste, religion in Indian politics. And but you have critics in that regard, because you have people like what is it, giving too much emphasis on society will neglect politics. Teda Skopal, who told bring back the state. And you have Sartori, who say that we have to establish autonomy of politics, we cannot ignore, but however we cannot ignore how politics also shapes society. So here I have given some scholars in the notes which is arranged, but the only challenge here will be what? One common mistake what students do. When you know so much scholars and so much content, you become overwhelmed and just try to dump your content into any question you see. But instead of that, try to structure your answer. Let us say questions have come directly here. They have told comment on political sociology approach. Plain and simple, first define or tell political sociology is a modern approach which emerged after the Second World War. Then that quote, what is there? There is no politics without society. There is no society where there is no politics. Then you say Aristotle can be considered as the father of political social approach. Then you have to speak about why this approach became important. Emergence of decolonization, emergence of third world countries. Now it was not possible to study the politics in these countries because there was close interaction between traditional elements within the society and how the state functioned. Hence you can say political sociological approach became very important. You can give example Atul Kohli, study of caste in Indian politics, or Rajni Kothari, how he says caste influences politics in India. Political sociological approach also brings that what? Studies about how society influences state and how state can influence society at large. But nevertheless the approach is also been criticized. Why? Because it gives too much emphasis on society rather than the state. And that is why Teda Skopal says that bring back the state. Or what Sartori told, it is very important to make sure that politics remains autonomous, but at the same time we also have to look at how state influences society. So in these kind of areas, it is very important for you to focus on how to structure your answer. Same thing, they ask political economy, same approach you use, political sociology, political modernization, political. Or sometimes question won't be direct, question will be indirect. They might ask, critically analyze the changing nature of states in developing societies. So obviously changing nature of state in developing societies, you have to say when immediately these countries got independence, what was the nature of the state? Obviously state, here you can say democracy was not stabilized. Here you can say F.W. Riggs, prismatic societies. Or you can use Samuel Huntington's thing that what? Too much aspiration led to political decay. But however you can say over the years the nature of state, like you can take example of India and how you can say the state has evolved. Or you can say in some of the developing societies, even though they started on a democratic framework, they are not able to. Give the example of Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and what are the reasons? Now when you reason, you link concepts here, political decay, developmental trap. You are getting the point. So largely you have to have a broader bird view to analyze these questions, and some people will find these questions difficult. The reason is that they are confused what to write or how much theories to link. It's not about how much theories you link, you need to look at the demand of the question, then you have to be able to answer this question. For let us take one example here as a question to answer on comparative politics. See, this question they have asked in 2021. The modernization thesis, the modernization thesis asserts that affluence breeds stable democracy, stable democracy. How would you explain? How would you explain? How would you explain the success of India being the world's largest democracy, as an exception? This has been asked for 20 marks in 2021. So if you closely read the question, they say that modernization thesis, it asserts affluence breeds stable democracy. Now what do you make out of that statement? What is the make of that? Online students, the first part, second part will come later. First part is saying that the modernization thesis, it asserts that affluence breeds stable democracy. What do you mean by that? If you understand the context of this, then you can easily answer the second part. Yes, Shivani, Satyam. Economic development, correct. Affluence means what? If you have economic development, naturally that leads to a stable democracy. So you can say the political modernization theories which are there, Samuel Huntington, etc., or even Aristotle way back had told what? If there is economic development, it naturally leads to what? Stabilization of democracy. For example, if you take Western countries in that regard, one of the main reasons for stabilization of democracy is economic development. But if you look at developing societies or underdeveloped countries, why here it has not stabilized? Because they lack economic development, means market-based economy, rationalization. But India, if you look at, without being economically developed, still India is a democratic society. Why and how India remains as an exception? So one, you can say that political modernization theory is more Eurocentric and it can't be applied to all societies. India remains as an exception. How? The yesterday's class or day before class yesterday, what we discussed, same reasons. Amartya Sen saying that what? Democracy is a value which existed in Indian society for long, Sabha Samiti Vidhata. Or second one, you can say how Rajni Kothari says that even though India is a prismatic society, certain traditional elements have enabled Indian democracy to function. For example, caste can be used for mobilization of people in elections in that regard. Third, you can say that even though India had limited economic development, India had a lot of politically developed. For example, our constitution, what was framed in that regard, it was framed by those people who were Western educated and who had the idea of liberal ideas, and that was inculcated. Election Commission, judiciary. Or in India, we do have civil society. What Yogendra Yadav says that it is the public which has rescued the Indian Republic. So these have been the factors that even though where we can say India is not a developed country economically, but we can say still India has had what you can say in terms of political culture. We have had what? A civic culture. Hence you can say India remains an exception to the world, and India has proved J.S. Mill wrong, and India has remained as the world's largest democracy. So in the first part of your answer, you have to say what is the key thesis of the modernization theory. In the second part, you have to tell why this thesis does not hold good for India. That is what the answer you are expected to write. Simple. That's what I told. It's a very simple thing. So again, that's what I told. Here, what many people think is that they first and foremost, that's what I told. Try to read the question correctly, understand the question correctly. 90% of the times your answer will be organic. So many times that's what we say. The purpose of the crash course was not what you can say, just give you new content or fill you with more content. The purpose of the crash course was only to help you to understand how questions are coming in the exam and how to bring certain basic concept, and also how to use your thinking abilities. Brainstorming has to be done. So many people, what they do is that they join test series without brainstorming, and they think writing more number of tests will give you the result. It won't, unless you learn the art of deciphering the question. And that is why you can say that why we launched the crash course in Delhi this time, because that is what we can say, we want to bring a change in approach, that how the crash courses will happen and how students should learn the art of deciphering the question. The first step of a good answer writing is your ability to understand the question correctly, your ability to organically bring your content. So for the parts on comparative politics, I have already shared notes that you need to go through and try to take more number of questions like this. First, think in a common, means take time to think, initial period, like for 5 to 6 days, just take time, don't try to rush into answer. Try to understand what exactly they are asking. Then you will be able to decipher the question and get the answer correctly. So you have Shivani Vats of the Kautilya and Dharma Shastra argues that material needs satisfaction of affluence. Okay, that you can add in the starting, but here the question is not about affluence. Question is about India. Though India economic development has not happened to that extent, how India survived as a democracy. You have to bring reasons for that. That is a major demand of the question. So you can say they've asked, describe the changing nature of state in developing society in context of inclusive growth in 21st century. They're asking, critically analyzing changing nature of state in developing societies in context of inclusive growth in 21st century. So basically you have to say that what is the nature of state. Take India as only an example of a developing society. So before, what was the nature of the state in India? Largely it was what you can say, socialist state in that regard. And today you can say after liberalization, privatization, the state is character is changing. Now speaks about the rise of non-state actors, NGOs, civil society, what role they play and what are the policies brought by this state. But at the same time you can also speak about in certain countries why they have failed to bring inclusive growth. Right? Because in here the problem what happens, this like Asian drama, what Gunnar Myrdal says, the state should have the capacity to implement inclusive growth. So many times the state has failed. Why? Because strong institutions have been not there. So in most of these kind of questions, what you do, think from a practical example, how the nature of the, first tell what was the nature of the state in 20th century and how the nature of these states are changing, why it is changing. Because today inclusive growth has become very important. Democracy has expanded, people have voting rights. So how the nature of the state has changed. You can bring different viewpoints. One viewpoint you can say, yeah, the state has changed, the state is becoming inclusive. The other viewpoint, like a Marxist viewpoint, which says that states have not failed to bring inclusive growth. Use your perspectives in your answer. So here you cannot just think about, which theory, you can use theory even from party. Getting the point? So if you are a person, you feel that comparative politics is very difficult for you to answer because you will have to answer compulsory questions. Choose 3 questions from part B. Okay. So don't try to go by the logic that everybody will answer from part B, so my answer cannot be different. That won't be a right logic. Go for always answering those questions you know well, whether others are writing the same question or not. Because if you try to answer some question where you are not able to understand the question or organically link the content, you are not going to get marks. So be very careful in which question you choose. So go for those questions which you feel you have more content or more perspectives that you can bring in your answer. And always don't try to artificially link theories. So you are speaking about political parties. Remember Sartori, remember Lasky, remember Gandhi, remember M.N. Roy. Gandhi and M.N. Roy speaks about partyless democracy. Robert Michael's iron law of oligarchy. So most of the parties in India or in Asian societies are hierarchical in nature. They are dynastic in nature. They lack internal democracy. Also try to link about Duverger's law, Ricker's theory in your analysis. So most of the questions they will ask, particles have been political parties have been vehicles of or the engines of democracy. First half of the answer explain how political parties have helped in institutionalization of democracy. Gabriel Almond says that political parties play a very important role of what? Interest articulation. But second half of the answer you speak about why political parties have failed. So you can say lack of internal democracy. Many political parties ideologically are becoming similar. Post ideology we have entered. Third reason, political parties also have become under the control of multinational companies. So they don't have autonomy in interest articulation of the weaker sections. So that is why social movements are on the rise. Same thing again you can bring a Yogendra Yadav say that in India it is not the opposition party which has rescued the Indian democracy, it is the public which has rescued the republic. You are getting mind. So in these kind of questions, it's not about new content. The same content what you have, how effectively you structure your answer you write, that matters a lot. So what you do is that not writing more answers, do brainstorming of more questions, take more questions, try to decipher the question, try to bring structuring. That will help you to a certain extent. Then slowly you start practicing one or two questions, then you will get the flow. So any doubt for the online students in these areas? So largely we have not taken the complete issues, we have largely just given an orientation about how to address these parts, and some value addition content has been also given. That was the agenda of the crash course what we had. And you know, we cannot tell always the crash course has been top notch. There is always scope for improvement, that we will try to improve again the next year. And more important, you can say mains is not about reading, it's about thinking. Your ability to think is very important. The more you have trained your mind to think from different perspectives, much easier it becomes to write creative answers. And it's not that you have to have huge content, have minimal content, but a decent content which you can integrate. Practice a lot of previous year questions. And mains, don't lose hopes saying that you are not prepared, because 30-40 days time is more than enough, provided you have read this subject once before. All you need to do is brainstorming. And any point of time, any doubt what you have, I will be always available on Telegram. As I think most of you know my Telegram ID, but still if you want to contact me on Telegram, you can contact me. So we hope this time that those people have taken the course, etc., and we have also offered the course, the IR part to everybody, that 300 plus is a possibility, provided if you write a structured answer, clearly understood and deciphered the question paper. Third one, keywords and decent theoretical linkages and good introduction and conclusion is what we say is a quality of a good answer. So with this we will wind up the session, and some content part will be updated shortly that you can go through for the content. So we wish all the best for those who are writing mains in that regard. And yeah, if you have any other doubt, you can contact me at any point of time. Okay, thank you.